Hi everyone, my name is Aurora and welcome to this video. Today we're talking about how one of the biggest fast fashion giants is ripping off its customers, it's underpaying its workers, all for the sake of profit, just what we needed for the end of 2022. Honestly, it's pissing me off. If this topic is interesting to you, please keep on watching, maybe even hit that like button. And if you're feeling super adventurous, maybe even hit that subscribe button. Why? Because when I hit 500 subscribers, my community tab will open and I will finally be able to do surveys. And since I'm a sociologist, surveys are everything. Jokes aside, I just want that last bit of tool that will help me to create a very loving and supportive community here on this channel. Also, to commemorate those 500 subscribers, I will do my first ever live stream where I'll be drawing a flower for each and every one of you. So if you want to be a part of such initiative of this little community, please do so by clicking the subscribe button. Thank you. Anyway, let me paint you a picture. So I was doing my university work and trying to finish my degrees and things like that, and I needed something to take off my mind of it. So I went to social media for my dopamine hit, and I was scrolling through all the good news, all the bad news, as it goes in 2022. And then I saw this article. Despite 41% profit surge, fashion giant ZARA's owner Inditex plans price hikes amid high inflation. Why? The only question that popped to my mind was why? Do they really need it? Is it really necessary? What exactly is the purpose of making the prices go up? Is it maybe to pay your workers? Is it maybe to make sure that the materials that you're using are actually sustainable? Is it maybe going for increasing safety in the factories so that your workers, who are the ones who are actually making you money because they are the ones who are producing the clothes that are going to be sold, because you want to make sure that they are not putting their lives online to achieve that? Or is just corporate greed? Well, let's find out. I have my laptop over here. We're going to do some research together. In every article that I come across, I will link in the description so that you can check it out yourself. Hashtag your research. Or hashtag read the manuscript and things like that. Anyway, this is not a scripted video. This is not an essay of some sort, because my brain is a mush from all the uni work and I need something to take my mind of it. But we'll just go through some points and see what is actually happening and why, and what does it actually mean for some people. So let's start with that first article. It was published on 16th of September, and it says, Spanish multinational retail clothing chain ZARA's owner and parent organization Inditex has said this week that it plans to hike prices again this autumn. The fashion giant, which is one of the world's top clothing retailers, is trying to offset soaring costs as it worries demand will weaken due to the cost of living crisis. Sounds interesting. Okay, first of all, I didn't know that they were hiking up their prices beforehand, because as you might know, if you've been following around on this channel, I've been doing retail detox for more than 2 years now. I did shop once in that meantime, and it was because my cousin was getting married and my mom said that I have to get a new dress, so can't argue with your mom. Anyway, I had no idea that they were raising their prices, but honestly it makes sense considering what the hell is happening with the economy in general. So first we had the pandemic, then now we have the Third World War. Let's be honest, especially in Europe, especially in my country as well, because we are changing literally our currency in the midst of all of this crisis to euro. So that's why the prices have been going up, literally for no reason, but to make it easier to convert and to cheat your people and things like that. Anyway, this part is very interesting to me. It worries demands will weaken due to the cost of living crisis. First of all, fashion industry, even though everybody thought that it will, break down because of the pandemic, since people are not leaving their houses and things like that, that prediction turned out to be wrong. They did make a lot of money, and maybe we will go later how much. It's actually called a lipstick effect. So in a time of crisis, people will search for something that brings them joy, something that doesn't cost a lot of money, but something that they can use to make themselves feel better. It's a cheat code, literally, for economic crisis. Uh, you've seen it happen many, many times over throughout the history when things like lipstick, for example, were surging in popularity because people just needed something to bring them joy. At the start of the pandemic, you had the same thing, both with the clothes, but the shift was instead of, the special occasion clothing and things like that, people were buying leisure clothing and sportswear. The second thing is it wasn't a lipstick effect per se, but we could say it was a nail polish effect. Because you couldn't wear lipstick underneath your mask, it was easier to put some color on your fingernails instead. And I think that a big part of that nail polish popularity actually is partially thanks to Simply Nailogical, actually, because she just launched her whole taco brand a few months literally before the pandemic started and before people turned to nail polish for a pop of color. So this article mentions a little bit about the profits. So they say that Marta Ortega, by the way, the daughter of the founder, so Inditex is, I guess, monarchy, where the leadership is passed through the generations of people in the same family. She took over as a non-executive chairman. Inditex reported revenue of 14 billion euros, up from 11 billion euros a year earlier, about an increase of $3 billion in revenue. And they're saying that they're scared of losing revenue, so that's why they're increasing the prices. Wild. This is very interesting as well. So they're struggling. I mean, they're gonna bankrupt. They're losing money all the way around. I mean, what is happening? The parent company of ZARA also said that its gross margin reached 57.9% during the first half of the year, the highest in 7 years. So talking about that loss of revenue, that's not happening, and literally there is no statistical evidence for them to even be scared of such thing, because we know that that's not going to happen. The only reason that might happen is if suddenly people woke up and stopped buying in fast fashion stores, but that's not going to happen because a lot of people don't have another opportunity to buy clothing, cheap in a cheap way and things like that, if it's not from fast fashion brands. Because as you might know, even second-hand stores are not as cheap as they used to be because of their popularity. So we have to keep in mind that for some people, fast fashion is not a choice. It's a need, literally, because they don't have another opportunity. So this is as well interesting in the same article, where they said that the reason why Inditex is raising the prices is because the people are buying less. They say this: Inditex has decided to increase its prices earlier in the year to cope with inflation at a time when shoppers worldwide were buying more clothes for holidays, events, and the return to the office after lifting of COVID restrictions. So we surge in buying, but they say that people aren't buying, so that's why they're increasing their prices. What it seems to me is that they're using the fact that the wave of higher purchases to make more money, to hoard them literally as a golem, to make sure that they will have money in years to come, in the dark ages or whatever they're thinking about. I mean, I don't know if they know something that we don't know, but it seems like a big overreaction on something that's not gonna happen. But I'm not an economist, I'm just a sociologist, historian, and an anthropologist. What the hell do I know about anything? Anyway, we've seen this nonsense that was shown in this article. Now let's see some other data as well. Okay, so there is this interesting article that's actually older than this last one. This one was from September and this one from June. As a reaction to already increased prices of Inditex fashion. Fashion giant Inditex fuels fears of greedflation. I think this is a great term because we've seen a lot of this, not only during the pandemic, during the economic crisis, during the oil prices now, during the transfer of currency in my country as well. When people see a chance to do something that will, be beneficial for them, no matter what it does for anybody else, they will mostly take the chance. It's mostly not people's fault. It's literally called the selfish gene that is making us do things that are beneficial for us and for our families instead of someone else, some stranger, some nameless people on the other side of the world and things like that. And that is natural and it is needed because that's how we survive. It's how we survive through thousands of years of human evolution. But the thing is that this is more than it. This is not something that they have to do to survive. This is something that they choose to do because of their corporate greed, because they want to make as much money as they can on the backs of the people that are literally supporting the industry. If you do not have the factory workers, if you don't have the field workers who are producing the textile, if you don't have people who are producing the colors for the textile, if you don't have people who are shipping the clothing, who are selling the clothing, who are working in warehouses, if you're not paying the designers who are actually making the clothing, but you're in the same time overcharging the people who are buying it and then putting all of the money in your own pocket, that's selfish, that's greedy, and that's not something that we should tolerate in any industry, in any personal or professional situation, because it's just crazy. It's not self-preservation, it's, I don't know, it's just pure evil to me. Let's just say they're not going to a good place. This article says something interesting in the end. It says Inditex has benefited from pushing up prices faster than its rivals while being able to hold on to loyal customers, according to analysts. So I'm interested in this. I guess it's another strategy. Decades ago, when fast fashion was in its beginnings of what we know it as today, the way that the retailers made sure that you were spending money at their place was because they were lowering their prices faster than their rivals. But now they're doing the opposite. They're picking up the prices for whatever reason. As you can see, it's probably bullshit. In normal market conditions, companies are often dissuaded from raising prices because of competition fears. So, yeah, you're literally, snapping off your own foot if you're lowering the prices because you're losing the money. You're also risking everything if you're picking up the prices and nobody else is, because your customers' wallets are not getting bigger, they're getting smaller because of the inflation. So it doesn't make sense to do the same thing actually. But it seems that for Zara it actually works, because in the June they had a 10-year high of 60% profit margins. So that's wild. It shouldn't be like that. From my personal opinion, I think that most of the businesses should actually operate as non-profits, in that sense that what you put into the industry should be made back, and every part of extra money should be either pulled into the business itself, so either in growth or in making the service a bit better or making it a bit more sustainable or whatever it is, and the rest of it should be spread evenly between the workers, to the people who are actually responsible for making that money, and then the rest should be spent on the community. So either building up parks, cleaning up oceans, making pet shelters, or whatever it is, but industries, the companies, and everybody else should, make their contribution to the society, not just take from it all the time. It just doesn't make sense. We can't all be selfish. It won't work. It isn't sustainable. It just isn't. And we were seeing that with the increase in wealth disparity, where less than 1% of the wealthiest people own as much as 50% of the poorest people, and their carbon emission is literally bigger than of those 50% of the world population, so 4 billion people. We have less than 100 people on one side and 4 billion people on the other side. It's not fair, it's not okay, and it's crazy to think that some people will do anything to make sure that they are, amongst those 100 people. They also mention, the recent events. So they say Russia's invasion of Ukraine and renewed lockdowns in China have added to pressures, but analysts say Inditex has recovered faster than most. So again, their fears of losing profits, of losing the revenue and things like that, it's just not scientifically proven. It doesn't have any data to back it up. On the contrary, it has data to show that they are super greedy, they're even making more money than they used to, and we're just scraping the surfaces here. There are just some basic articles you can find if you literally Google, Inditex profit margins and things like that. It's public knowledge. The chief executive, Oscar Garcia Meserias of Inditex, said we continue to expect pricing to contribute to 2022 spring and summer sales in a mid-single digit with no impact on volume. What the fuck does that even mean? They said Inditex has set aside 184 million pounds to cover a hit from closures this year amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So they had millions of dollars spare to put aside to make sure that they're not losing a lot of money, but then they will make you pay for all the money that they've put aside because, you know, I have no idea. But someone says that it might actually fire back to them. Why? Because if you look into the customer base for Inditex, it is mostly young people who do not have a lot of money, who do not have many opportunities to spend, to invest in things like that. And those people will be the ones who will actually make sure they are not splurging on things like fast fashion because they literally have to pay their living conditions. You know, the housing problem in the whole world is crazy, which is just ridiculous as itself because at least I think in US it's around 20 or 30% of homes are not even owned by people but by corporations, and they're hoarding them to make sure that the other units or the apartments or whatever are surging in prices so that they can make more money on it all. It just, I mean, you can see it's not just a problem with fast fashion, it's also a problem with capitalism as a whole because it is making sure that those greedy bastards have an opportunity to do what they actually want to do, to make money for themselves on the backs of other people. Those people who are hit by housing crisis, who are hit by their student debts, who are hit by, you know, health conditions and things like that, who are the first to lose their jobs in economic crisis because of the lack of experience and things like that, they will be the ones who will be saving money because they won't be able to do anything else. If you're choosing between your electricity bill and, you know, a new pair of boots, you'll choose your electricity bill. It's not rocket science. But if the prices stay the same, or if it was just course corrected by the inflation, maybe people won't notice how expensive that fashion actually is, and they will still keep on buying because they'll still have that mindset of fast fashion being affordable. But now it seems that it's not affordable as much. Let's see that Marta Ortega that we mentioned, the founder's daughter, what is her pay? Let's see if Inditex actually has money or doesn't have money. Just a fun fact, in ex-Yugoslavia, you know, the socialistic regime, they had this rule that the difference in the wages of the least paid worker and the most paid worker, so literally, you know, the grunt worker that can be replaced literally today, or on the other side, the CEO or whatever, their wage gap between those two workers was 7 times. Imagine now if Inditex, for example, had a 7 times wage gap. That would mean a lot of money for those garment workers. Let me tell you that, because apparently Marta Ortega is going to earn 1 million euros annual salary as president of Inditex. 1 million euros a year. It doesn't seem like ZARA is losing a lot of money if they have $1 million to pay just one worker just to show up, because she is a non-executive chief. She's just there to make sure that there's that continuity in power when it comes to the monarchy of Inditex. In this article, it also says one other interesting thing, and that is that her pay is 900,000 euros. But since she's a person with a chair on the board, 100,000 euros will be added because it is an annual salary set for all directors. So all of them get money because they're doing their job, let's say, and then they get that bonus part just for having some titles as well and for sitting on some board, which honestly I think looks a bit like that meme where all the professors are laughing in the hallway because they put all of the exams in 1 week. It literally feels like that. One fiscal year, the fashion conglomerate that groups together the brands ZARA, Bershka, Stradivarius, Pull&Bear, Oysho, and Massimo Dutti increased its sales by 36%. But it's a turnover 2% lower than that recorded in 2019. I mean, that's sad. Imagine that. I can't believe. I mean, how will they pay those $1 million a year for one person with just 36% increase in sales? It's not possible. You know, every economic will tell you that. It's just not possible. You have to earn more. Next thing I want to see is how much the previous owner or the previous CEO of the Inditex was earning and how much his compensation for living is. Because those people, those important people who are doing less stuff than the rest of the people in that same company, actually when they get laid off, they get money for it. The lowest of the low don't get anything. You get, thank you note for risking your life, I guess. Maybe not even that. The previous CEO, the Pablo Elsa, got 23 million euros for his departure from the company. 23 million euros. Most of the people, if they spend their whole lives working, won't see that much money. It's just crazy to think that someone is getting such money just for being laid off. It's crazy. I mean, it's not like he wasn't getting those $1 million a year just like Marta is. Maybe he got even more because, he was a man after all and many more years of experience and things like that. So it could be that he was earning even more. But 23 million euros just for, leaving your job is crazy. And it doesn't seem fair that that money came on the expense of the garment workers and on the expense of the customers. They're loyal customers, as they've said, that will still keep on buying even when they raise the prices and lower the quality of clothing. Crazy. It's a crazy world we live in. In this article, I've also seen, yes, the profit margins of 36% that we've seen before in the other articles, but they also mention the net profit. The net profit is literally the turnover of the money, but before you remove all of your expenses, actually. So this is literally all the intake of the money that company, Inditex, got in the last year. And it was an increase of 193% compared to the previous year. So almost 200% more money was poured into Inditex than it was just a year before. And yes, since the increase of the cost and all of that, it turns to 36% of increase in the profits alone. So clean money that they can do whatever they want to. Let's be honest, put it in their pockets. But it's crazy to think that they're still talking about, hiring up the prices if they're making so much more money. It's crazy. Let's see those costs that they're talking about. Can we find out what type of costs is it? If it were all about sustainability, I would say great job. It costs a lot of money to be sustainable, to be ethical, to do ethical production, to pay your workers living wage and things like that. And it would warm my heart to see that that's exactly what they're spending their money on. I actually, when I first saw this whole news about them increasing their prices, I asked my followers on Instagram what they think the company will spend that difference in income on. I gave them a choice of paying their workers in the factories more. I gave them a choice of paying their workers in the retail stores more. Also, I put lowering their CO2 emissions, and their landfill dumpings by recycling and things like that. And the last option that I put was buying a new yacht for the CEO. And the people responded, of course, as I suspected, by saying that they expect the company to spend more money on yachts instead of everything else. Only one person from all of the people who were actually filling out that survey said that they think that they will pay their factory workers more because of the pressures that the sustainable fashion movement is making on brands like Inditex to make their production a bit more sustainable, a bit more ethical. I would be so glad if that person was right. I mean, that's the world that we all strive for. That's the reason why I made this channel, was to make sure that I spread that message of it's not okay what's happening right now to all of us, or what's happening to the planet, what we are contributing to when it comes to damaging the ecosystem and the economic system and everything else. So I really hope that one day that will be true. But as it seems right now, from the things that I can see here, they're not really trying to make things better. They're not really trying to pay people more. They just want to get as much money as they can while they can, just for themselves. Inditex says that one of the reasons they are pumping up their prices is because they're moving their production closer to Spain, where Inditex is located. They swear that almost 50% of all of the garments that are produced are being produced in the region of Spain, Morocco, Portugal, and Turkey. This is partially true because a lot of the production actually isn't in those countries, but in my country and some other countries in the Balkan area. I actually mentioned one of the pair of shoes that I had from Pull&Bear. They're literally produced in Serbia next door, and I know that those people weren't paid enough. And when things say that they are made in Spain or Turkey or USA for that matter, is not because they're actually produced there, but because they're assembled there. So companies can literally get away with making the clothing anywhere else in the world, but as long as I think 5 or 10% of it in the finishing process is made in the country where they want to put a label on, they can legally do it. And that's why we see a lot of made in USA things that are literally made in China. But, you know, legally there's nothing you can do because since, for example, Apple products are made in factories in Eastern Asia but assembled in the US, a little one screw I think it is that they pull in the end to make sure that it is made in USA. The same thing goes for General Motors and other big US companies. I remember some news from a few years ago when Inditex literally refused to pay its workers, like no pay for, I think it was 3 months or something like that. And it wasn't happening only in one place. Let me just find it. Oh no, this was 2021. It wasn't a few years ago. It was last year when this article came up. Worst fashion wage theft. Workers go hungry as Indian suppliers to top UK brands refuse to pay minimum wage. That minimum wage is, by the way, 16 pennies an hour. So there is a lot to be said about that. It's not only Inditex in this case, it's also Nike, H&M and other brands that are actually producing their clothing in the same factory, by the way, but everybody pulls their own label on it and they call it differently. So there is that as well. As they say, in 2021, a major clothing production hub in India, people went on strike, literally, garment workers, because their children are going hungry as factories refuse to pay the legal minimum wage in what is claimed to be the biggest wage theft to ever hit the fashion industry. More than 400,000 garment workers in Karnataka have not been paid the state's legal minimum wage since April 2020, according to an international labor rights organization that monitors working conditions in factories. The Workers' Rights Consortium estimates the total amount of unpaid wages so far to be more than £41 million. So, does Inditex have that much money to pay their workers? Of course they do, because as you saw, they gave $13 million for the man who was being laid off. But they didn't have $41 million to pay months worth of wage for 400,000 garment workers. Those people are not getting paid shit, let's be honest. If you buy a shirt on sale on 70% off, you literally pay more than the person who made that garment got in a whole week. So let it sink in. If you didn't watch The True Cost, please do. It's an amazing documentary and it will help you open your eyes a bit. You just put things in a bit of a perspective when you think about our own privilege of being in a developed part of the world, let's say. I mean, Croatia is anything but it's still in the Europe and in the west part of the world and things like that we use to differentiate between different living conditions, let's be honest, because it really isn't fair what some people have to go through. And even in Croatia, the garment workers are not paid equally. They're not paid a living wage most of the times. In the recent months, we also had some instances like this where factories had to shut down because they couldn't pay their workers for a few months, so they had to, say that they are broke and things like that. Even the government tried to say some of them, but failed in doing so. And we lost most of the fashion industry that we had, even though our fashion industry was one of the strongest in the world. It was recognized in the world, and we've been producing some of these high quality garments and things like that for literally hundreds of years. So it's sad to see that that industry is dying off, but it can't not die off if you're not paying those workers, right? Because you can't expect someone to sit there for 8+ hours every day in horrible working conditions because it's hot, it's steamy, it's literally toxic when it comes to the colors for the fabrics and things like that. And it just doesn't feel right to pay them, what I said, 16 pennies a day. It just makes no sense. By the way, how toxic the fumes actually are. So my grandma used to work in a fabric factory, but in the aisle of the colors. And the rule was because it was socialistic regime and they cared about their workers because they knew that without workers you don't have the produce, without produce you don't have selling, you don't have the customers, and the whole system of economics is actually connected, who would say. Anyway, they actually had to mandatory drink few milliliters of milk every day to make sure that the poisoning that they're getting from all the colors are getting through their system more easily. So there is that. One worker said she only earned about half of what she needed to cover basic living costs, such as food and rent. Living wage used to mean something. It used to mean that you would not only get 100% of the money that you need for your living conditions, so your rent, your food, your utilities, and things like that, but you also left with, I think, 20% for leisure activities and savings. In this economic system that we have and the trends that we have in the economics in the last few years proves that more and more people are living below that poverty line. They're not having that cushion of 20% for leisure and savings because most of the people are actually losing money every time they're paying rent in 2022, which is horrific. I can't believe that this is the world we're living in. When it comes to this whole situation, a spokesperson for Inditex said Inditex has a stringent code of conduct which requires all factories in our supply chain to pay legal wages as a minimum. We are engaging suppliers in the region to urge them to make the VDA payment. So, when you say it like that, to pay legal wages as a minimum, you're literally encouraging the people who are actually the owners of that factory, because most of the times fast fashion industry works in a way that they do not own the factory, so that's why they don't have a legal responsibility to know what's happening there to those workers, if they're getting paid, things like that. They're just collaborating, let's say, with the factory itself. And one factory can work with multiple brands, such as this one that wasn't paying its workers. They work for Nike, for Puma, and things like that as well. The thing is that some countries don't have minimum living wage, or some countries have a very outdated living wage system from before many inflation waves and things like that. So it just doesn't make sense. It isn't compatible with the actual situation on the field. And the other thing is, some countries are on purpose not saying what minimum wage is, because they don't want to lose all the revenue that comes from working with fashion giants such as Inditex. Because even if the garment workers themselves don't get a lot of money, the owner of the factory actually gets a lot. And the country itself as a whole, where that industry is located, gets some bonuses from being in business with someone from overseas, because some other businesses also bloom. So you get more people who can be drivers, you get more people who can be garment workers, field workers, and things like that. So it's helping their ecosystem, let's say, but it's also quite damaging it, because those people are then stuck in the jobs that they can't leave because they can't find anything else, but they're still not getting enough that they need. As was mentioned in this article, a woman said that she had to move with her sister because she couldn't pay her rent anymore by just her wage, and you should be able to do so. You should be able, by your own wage, not with the help of your spouse, your parents, or whatever, you should be able to, as I said, use your money, your hard-earned money, to buy rent, utilities, food, and have 20% extra for leisure activities and savings. Let's see some other ZARA fun facts. Net income of ZARA is 16.3 billion pounds. The ZARA brand itself is 9.8 billion pounds. Zara's net sales contribute 70% of the total sales of the Inditex group. Zara's advertising spending is less than 0.3% of its revenue. I've seen this before. Let me just... Yes, I need to find literally an article about this because it's an interesting thing. They're creating this illusion of exclusivity because you don't see a lot of commercials for Zara. You see a lot of commercials for H&M wherever you go to. You see a lot of commercials for Zalando, Boho, whatever, Shein and other fast fashion brands. But Zara, you won't see anywhere almost. You'll see some billboards here and there. You'll see some of their commercials in fashion magazines, but you won't see it in every commercial block on the TV. And there's a reason why, as I said, because of that feeling of exclusivity and something that you shouldn't do. This article that I found, beekeeping, whatever it means, they say that the number one reason for them not spending a lot of money on marketing is to take control of production to create scarcity for every style. Zara produces 60% of its own products. Where does the other 40% come from? Nobody knows. But we know that they do not produce their own clothing, even though they sell it. And I think that's okay. A typical fashion shop in Spain just expects one customer to visit 3 times a year. For Zara, it goes up to 17 times. If you've ever been to Zara multiple times, if you've been checking their website and things like that, you'll see that they have 52 different seasons, let's say micro seasons. So they go on a weekly basis where they change what is available for sale and what is not. One week you'll see that something was there in massive stock, the other week it won't be there at all, and then 3 weeks later it will be on sale, but for a bigger price than it was a little before. I've been actually monitoring things like that a few years ago when I was thinking about starting Retail Detox, but I wasn't really sure why and what was happening and things like that. So I was just mindfully scrolling, let's say, through online retailers to make sure that I'm not wasting all of my money. And that's when I noticed some of these things that I've just mentioned, of them literally making something available now and they're not available later and things like that. That's when I learned one valuable trick, and that is everything is actually always uploaded on the website. You can't have a web developer that will be there every day, literally creating the code from the beginning, putting new things in and all of that. Most of the times everything is there in the database of the website, but it's just not available to you as a consumer when it comes to your user interface. The thing that you can do, the thing that I did for literally years, and it did work, is to take the little link of the clothing item in the color and the size that you want to, and then save it. You can literally access that garment by clicking on that specific link and see it, even though if you try to Google it or put the reference number or anything like that, you won't see it. So that's how I got actually some of my garments after they were like sold out, but they actually weren't because they were still available, but just you couldn't find them by regular ways. So here's a tip for you. What this does, making you go to the store 17 times a year, is actually making you spend a lot of more money than you would, because you're not sure if you came back a week later, will it still be there and will it cost the same? So Zara literally has a record. They're the best in the industry when it comes to the number of items that I sell on the full price. So 85% of the clothing sold at Zara is sold in a full price. The average for the fashion industry is between 60 and 70%. So they have around at least 15% more sales that are in full prices instead of some lower prices. The difference in wage between their garment workers in Europe and garment workers in India and other Asian countries is between 5 and 7 times higher, which is crazy. It shouldn't be like that. That difference in the wage should be between the most paid person and the least paid person, not for the people who are doing the same fucking job. It shouldn't be like that. People should be getting the money they actually deserve. They should be getting a percentage of all the sales that are happening and not what is the minimum living wage in that specific country, because as we said earlier, some of the countries actually do not have it for the sole purpose of encouraging the industries to move to their country. And we've seen some examples where when country introduced some laws to protect human rights, workers' rights, living conditions and things like that, some companies literally moved out the day later. So that's something to have in mind. So the things that I was mentioning earlier about them having 52 seasons is not something that I've made up. Apparently, Zara holds 6 days worth of inventory, while H&M holds 52 days and Gap holds 94 days of inventory. So they are not spending a lot of money on things like the warehouses. And you might notice that because if you think about it, Inditex, or specifically Zara, always chooses locations in the middle of the city, in one of the most luxurious, beautiful buildings and things like that. And those places usually do not have a lot of warehouse space. So they're literally weighing between paying a lot for their location and actually holding stock, which also allows them to change the stock more easily and to never have the need for flash sales and things like that. Because sometimes in retail stores, you'll see that if a retailer got just a few pieces of something left and it's just, they're in the warehouse and they don't know what to do with it, it just takes up space, they put it on a flash sale and they just sell it and now they can put something else in its place. Zara doesn't do that because they don't have to do that, because they sell all of their stock very quickly because they never get a lot of clothing in the same time. Also, if you were thinking that maybe the increase in the price will actually mean that those workers that are doing the driving and the warehouse sorting and things like that will get more pay, you'll be wrong, because there are no people that are actually working in some of the instances. Apparently, approximately 200 kilometers of underground tracks move merchandise from Zara's manufacturing plants to the 400 chutes, ensuring each order reaches its right place. Optical yet automatic reading devices sort out and distribute more than 60,000 items of clothing an hour. Zara's merchandise does not have to waste time waiting for human sorting, and you don't have to pay them either. Isn't that lovely? So we'll see if something will happen out of this, if something won't happen out of this. It probably won't, because it is an industry, it is not a private person, so they can probably do whatever they want, because I always say how much money they actually contribute to each country with paying taxes that they pay a lot less than we do and things like that. So, they have us where they want us. I've been rambling and rambling for a while now, and I know that this video will be a hot mess when I edit it, because this wasn't scripted at all and I was just ranting my way through it. I'm just shocked and amazed and terrified that we live in a world where things like this can happen. I'm not talking about them raising up their prices. Everybody is doing it right now, some for some reasonable reasons, some for some not so logical reasons, some for very selfish reasons. But I think that you and me and everybody else who are actual human beings, we still have a role in this system. We're still one part of the whole wheel of economic system, of the distribution of fashion and things like that. So I think that part of the responsibility is on us to say no. I don't want to participate in this. I want to remove myself from this. I don't want to encourage such behavior. I myself have found my way in it by doing these videos, by doing retail detox, by shopping secondhand and things like that. I do not hold to my heart that I did mistakes when it comes to fast fashion before. The shirt I'm wearing right now is from Zara from 5 years ago, and I chose specifically because I wanted to also mention that you do not have to be ashamed of shopping fast fashion. You do not have to be ashamed for liking fast fashion designs and things like that. It's okay. It's okay also to not have enough money to go and buy something handmade from organic materials and other things like that would be perfect if you had an opportunity to do so, but most of the people don't have the chance. Most of the people don't have a privilege of shopping sustainable, because if they did, they would do so. Nobody wants to wear the clothing that makes you sweat a lot because it's not breathable, or that breaks off after one wash, or loses color after 3 washes, or things like that. It's probably not something that you actually enjoy, and it's not something that you actually want to experience on the everyday basis, but it's probably something that you don't have a choice about and that you just have to do. And that's okay. And it's also okay if you were spending a lot of money on fast fashion and now you're still wearing those items. I was struggling a bit about that because I was like, I'm still promoting their fashion in a sense because I'm wearing it, you can recognize it and things like that. But I think that the more sustainable thing and more fair thing to do is once you make the decision of buying something that is not sustainable, of supporting an industry that you don't actually want to support, is to then do the most with it. Wear out that item until it breaks off. Swap your items with your friends or things like that. One thing that you could also do is go to secondhand stores and buy fast fashion items there, because you're actually buying products that are of higher quality, because a few decades ago those same fashion brands that are selling garbage now did much better job with the quality of their garments, because it wasn't as profitable as it is now. They weren't cutting as many corners as they are now. They did cut some corners. I've always been doing that and will always be doing that, because you still have that one person on the top of it all whose whole life purpose is to make money, and they're just using everyone else in the same pyramid of the industry to make sure that those people are actually making money for that one person. So keep that in mind. When you see things like this, where a brand is surging their prices, think about where that money is actually going to. Do your research if you can, what their spending habits are and things like that, what's actually happening, and then make a choice according to those information that you have, if you want to support it, if you want to make sure that they keep afloat of the whole situation. Perhaps it's a local brand that you want to support and don't want them to run out of business. It's okay then to not be hateful towards them because they raise their prices, because as I said, most of the people are raising their prices right now since we're in the midst of inflation, not only worldwide but micro as well, for example in Croatia. So it is important to keep in mind it's not realistic to expect that your favorite restaurant or your favorite designer or whatever will still be able to make their things in the same cost that they did before. But what it is important to keep in mind then is to make sure that the difference between them putting up their prices and the inflation that is realistic and expected and all of that is balanced, and not like what we've just seen with Inditex. If you have some thoughts about this whole topic, please let me know in the comments down below. I love to chat about things like this. I think that only by sharing the information that we find, by exchanging the ideas that we have of what is actually wrong and how it should be maybe solved, is the only way that we can move forward as a community and as a society and remove ourselves from this trap that we've been to for the last decades, because this just doesn't seem ethical, it doesn't seem sustainable, and it doesn't seem like something that either of us could be proud of. So, do your own research, find out things that you're not okay with, find out ways that you can actually contribute to solving them. And I hope that you will have some success with it and that everyone will contribute to making this world a better place. Anyway, that will be all for this video. Thank you so much for sticking around. I know that this video was a bit long and a bit boring, maybe even a bit depressing. I feel it. If you want to support me in any way, you can by liking and hitting the subscribe button. You can also comment down below. And I just hope I will see you some other time. Bye!